Please stand. Please be seated.
Nothing seems quite as it should be this morning. With the lectern back here and something attached to Evan's head. But as you can see, the grade 12s have got their crazy stuff in Pigtail Days. So thanks, Evan, for entering into the spirit of the thing. Well, something else that's a bit of a pleasure for us in this chapel. We're getting treated to some wonderful performances that are just demonstrating the voices and some of the musical skill that we have here at QMS. And this morning we have strings quartet who are going to come up and play for us. And I'll hand over to Miss Hounsome, who's going to introduce. Thanks.
Good morning. You're getting a bit of a sneak preview of one of the spring concert pieces, just a small group from the string orchestra going to play you a piece. I thought I might be able to make it appropriate because it's from the movie Legends of the Fall, and so, fall weather. And the music is by James Horner, and this is a theme called The Ludlows. I don't know if you've watched the movie. You're probably not quite old enough to watch that movie yet, but I really enjoyed it. Miss Craig smiling. Did you like that movie? Miss Craig was wonderful, wasn't it? So, but you'll get to hear the lovely music from it. So we've got 4 members of the string orchestra: Kieran, and Rebecca, Lucy, and Ashley. Okay, so I'm going to come and get set up and play you Legends of the Fall.
Rebecca, Lucy, Ashley, and Isaac. That was just a beautiful way to start the morning. I remember that movie, Legend of the Fall, from way back when. I think it was probably early 90s or something like that, was it? Does anyone know? So early 90s, and Brad Pitt, just absolute heartthrob, probably still is, and had just an interesting sort of family dynamic going on there, and relationship with his brother. Interestingly, it actually reminds me of, I have 3 boys. Some of you might have seen them sort of careering around campus. Has anyone seen 3 young Monros, or even a couple of young Monros? I'm seeing a few head nods. Mrs. Stewart typically gives me, the director of admissions, hopefully many of you know who she is, but she often gives me my sort of a play-by-play and an update of conversations and follow-up that I need to have with them. Felix is usually scootering in front of traffic. He was actually on the gym roof apparently the other day as well. He sort of climbed up on the outside, which is a ridiculous thing to hear. And she said, I had to say to him, look, you can't be on the gym roof. And then I turned around to help a parent with something, and by the time I looked back at him, he was at the top of a tree next to the gym, and she thought it was like a cartoon. How did he actually get up there? So he was a bit of a handful. And so as I was thinking about that moment the other day, and all these sorts of conversations and the personalities of my boys, it made me think back to the first time that I was ever left in charge of all 3. And Hector was 4, Cosmo was 2, and Felix was about 3 months old. And I thought, not a problem. We were up at the gym. This was on the Shawnigan Lake School campus. I don't know if anyone has been on that campus. Perhaps a few of you have been for Model UN reasons, or because you're playing sports and things like that, or just visiting siblings or whatever it was. So it's up there. There's the sportplex sort of runs down towards the chapel in the main school area, and in between the sportplex and the sort of bottom of what's quite a long set of stairs is a sort of grassy area, and there's a road that comes around by the chapel. And Mrs. Monro, who's an absolute culinary goddess, was heading home, said, look, I've got to go home and get supper prepared. Do you think you're going to be all right? To which I said, of course I'm fine. I've been a parent for some time now, and I'm sure I can have it all under control. Even though the first time I was left with Hector and Cosmo alone, they were both bleeding within the space of about half an hour, which was a bit of a shock. I'm not really sure how that happened, but I knew I was going to have this nailed. Not a problem. It's 3 children. One of them's essentially a glorified doorstop. Or a paperweight. When you're sort of 3 or 4 months old, functionally, there's not a great deal you're up to. Essentially, it's keep it alive, wait till it smiles, and love, just a wonderful, gorgeous little bundle of joy. Cosmo's very much in his own world, and it's once he gets absorbed by something, he's there for hours. Very difficult to get his attention, and so he's often dreaming. And Hector's just a complete bundle of energy. They did an experiment, I think it was, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but they wondered whether a sort of a professional gymnast could keep up. I don't know if anyone here has heard of this, but they lay a professional gymnast down on a sort of yoga mat next to a baby, and the baby was doing all of its movements, and there was a mirror on the roof, and the gymnast had to sort of mirror and do all the movements of the baby, and it was about, it took about 45 minutes, and the gymnast was absolutely knackered. And the baby's still going. Well, Hector's still in that mode. He's still trying to train his muscles and ligaments, how they connect and how they react. So he's just 100 miles an hour. I hadn't really factored that in. I just thought we'd have a really nice family walk back to the house. And so we started off from the sportplex, and I was pushing Felix along. I just popped him in, and off we went. And he was in the pushchair, lying back, and you can sort of see it decaying in the back garden if any of you walk past my house at this moment. But Hector charged on, and I got to the top of the steps and was chatting away with Felix and probably having a bit of a sing-song. I do quite enjoy singing. I got to the top of the steps, and there's quite a lot of them. I mean, there's probably in the realm of sort of 60 to 75 steps, and sort of 5 sort of tiers. We've got mezzanine levels. And so I had Felix down. He was down about sort of 4 or 5 steps just above that first mezzanine level. And I could see Hector had already run off into the distance. And he was quite close to crossing the road. And so I was trying to sort of yell to him, just hold on a minute, Hector. Not that he didn't know how to cross a road, but just kind of wanted to keep the gang together. And I turned around, I hadn't realised that Cosmo was obviously just in his own world, probably just inspecting fir cones, looking for small spiders or something like that. He would be really into something. So he was miles behind, and it was also snowy and quite icy. So I was trying to be sort of fairly careful on the steps here. And Cosmo comes along behind him. Cosmo, come on, hurry up, hurry up. It's 10th time he realises. And he gets to the top of the steps. And I'm like, you okay? And he sort of looked at me and smiled. And he just went, jump! And launched himself off the steps towards me. I couldn't believe it. He was never going to reach me. He didn't have the leg strength. He was too far. I thought, why are you jumping now? And so anyway, he's traveling through the air, and I'm grabbing, so I go to grab him, and he lands on the top of the step, because I'm thinking there's lost teeth here. What's the dental plan like? We've got to, we really got to get this guy, so we're going to have to get him sorted out. Anyway, so he lands there, and he realizes that he's okay, and he sort of looks at me and smiles, and he's like, and I'm like, why would you do that? And just as I'm thinking, why would you do that, all I can hear in the background is, dun, 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 dun. Felix is heading down the stairs on his own, in the pushchair. And it's at that moment that I realise, I really wish I'd strapped him in, because I hadn't even put the straps on. So he's careering down the stairs, and I'm thinking, this is horrendous, this is potential death. Firstly for him, and Mrs. Monro will kill me when I get home. So I'm just start sprinting. It's it's a Happy Gilmore moment. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's on the golf course, and the arms are going, and I'm flying. I'm not even looking where the steps are. I've got to save this baby. So I'm careering down the steps, and I say fortunately, it sort of veers off to the left, crashes into the wall, and goes over on its side at one of the mezzanine levels. And I think finally, momentum halted and stopped. That's something. And so I head down there, and I'm hoping that he's okay, because I just don't want to be responsible for that, a sort of anything, any terrible situation, potentially. Anyway, pick him up. He's fine. I don't think he was even crying. I'm not sure if he noticed what had happened. And my next concern was, I thought, great, alive, tick in the box. That was an important box to tick. What else is happening? Did anyone see that? That's my next concern. I was like, that would have looked absolutely horrendous. So hopefully I got away with it. Right at the bottom of the stairs, standing there in his sort of barber wax jacket, looking 48 years old, was the German Gap student, who was an incredibly responsible young person. I'm not sure how he achieved that level of responsibility at such a tender age. But there he was, just looking at me with sort of just very concerned. And I thought, okay, so someone's seen it. He's going to leave at the end of the year, which is something. But really nice guy, and his English is quite good, so he'll be able to tell this story quite well. So he came up to help, and absolutely lovely guy, very concerned, and that just really added to the level of embarrassment. And I managed to pick my sort of Felix up and the boys up, and I managed to eventually head home. And it took some time to admit what had happened to Mrs. Monro, because there was no evidence, there were no bruises, everyone was really as they should have been. So we sort of enjoyed a nice meal, and eventually I just plucked up the courage and said, look, I should probably, before it gets round, before Julius spreads the word around campus, you should probably know about this. And she just sort of shook her head. And it dawned on me, even though I'd been a parent for 4 years, I felt like I knew how to look after children and young people. It made me realise how dependent I was on Mrs. Monro, and for so many things. All these times we'd been out for a walk, all the times when you're just going through day-to-day activities as a family at home. She's doing so many things that I don't even appreciate, or I didn't even realise. And that one walk home, which should have been a very simple exercise, completely got out of hand. And it was just a little demonstration to me of how valuable those people are in our lives, who we're dependent in some ways, but it's also, I know it's that sort of that interdependence between people. And it's all around you. You're probably reflecting on people in your own family and some of the things that they do for you. People around the school or in the community, whether it's your friends when you're working as part of a project, whether you're on a particular sports team, whether you're playing as part of a strings quartet. There's so much dependence on each other, isn't there, to make sure that we're all okay, and that we're going to make it through whatever it is we're doing. So I didn't want to dive too deep into that, but I thought I'd share what has now become a relatively amusing story, even though it really wasn't at the time. And again, just, I guess, sharing a part of my life, but also just that part of trying to think of those people that you are really appreciative of in life, and those people that, even without necessarily knowing it, might not be people that you're necessarily overly aware of or even particularly fond of, but they're doing things that help support you day in, day out with your life. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monro, for that great story. True story too. All the best stories are true stories. I can't really top that, and neither do I want to. I think that just sets a lovely tone. But think about that, the message, in addition to being entertained, think about the message about taking things for granted, taking people for granted, right? Now, we all do it. We're all guilty as charged, right? But it never hurts for us to remind ourselves of ourselves. Who's doing all these little things that go to make life as pleasant and as manageable as it is, right? And those people are often, in my world, they're often called unsung heroes. And it takes a whole crew of unsung heroes to make our lives. So that's all I would leave you with. In addition to thanking Mr. Monro for sharing that with us, just think about unsung heroes and think about not taking things for granted. And also think about how beautiful that music was that we were treated to earlier on. So Mr. Monro would like, I'm blaming it on him, he would like us to try a new hymn today. So you have it. It happens actually, believe it or not, to be one of my favourites. There you go. So we're going to ask Miss Hounsome to play perhaps the first verse, so we get a familiarity with the tune, and then we'll have a go at it. If you'd bear with us. Be Thou My Vision. Sit down, please. So I have a question for you. Can we do better than that? Yeah, that was pretty flat. Given, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that enthusiasm. Given just the good mood that Mr. Monro said, let's finish on a literally on a high note, but metaphorically on a high note too. So let's give it a a bit more room. I know it's difficult. You don't know it. You've got masks on, but we can do better than that. So we leave the chapel with a real spring in our steps this morning. So let's give it a go. We'll just do the first verse, but do the first verse really well. Okay. Miss Anderson, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Much better the second time.
Much better second
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.